Thank you very much for having me. So I know we're being broadcast, and I am hooked up, so I'm not going to be able to walk around. So I'm going to stay here. I want to make this what you want it to be. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information about postbac programs, so we're all on the same page, and about what some of the issues that postbac programs are facing, some of the challenges, some of our hopes. And then I want to really get into a two-way conversation so that this is what you want it to be, not what I think you need. But when I was planning this, Rob and I got into a nice conversation on the phone. I was thinking, what do medical students and residents and faculty and attending want to know about postbac programs? And so just our dialogue made me realize that a dialogue is the most beneficial way to do this. So the definition of postbac program, just so you know, is for students who have graduated from undergrad already. And for whatever reason, they want to make themselves more competitive or competitive for medical school. So again, only for students who already have a bachelor's degree at an undergraduate school. And you'd think a postbac program simple enough. So anybody who wants to be more competitive for medical school or become competitive for medical school, but it's really not. I mean, it's more of a complicated conversation because postbac program means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I want to help you understand a little bit more about that. So they fall into three basic categories. So the first category is the category that I have been working in for the last 22 years, and that's the Career Changer postbac program for students who didn't take these courses as an undergrad. But the most popular type of postbac program is the Enhancer postbac program for students who already took the pre-medical courses and they're trying to become more competitive for medical school. And then the third type, which overlaps with the second type, is programs designated for students underrepresented or disadvantaged in medicine. So again, I want to talk to you a little bit more about each just so that you understand the similarities and differences. So when we have a two-way conversation, you can get it. As I said, the Career Changer program is for students who need to take the prerequisites or need to do the science courses because they didn't do it as an undergrad. And there are some commonalities and differences in postbac programs. So when you as a medical student, medical school is trying to evaluate candidates from postbac programs, and students and advisors are trying to figure out the differences between postbac programs. I think the most important thing to figure out is what access do the students have to the courses on the campus. The size is important to some people. Selectivity of the postbac program is some postbac programs anybody can sign up and take the courses. Others, there's a rigorous admissions process. There is typically no financial aid available on the campus level for postbac programs. Typically, students have to fund this on their own privately or through Stafford loans. And then other questions that students, advisors, and you might want to ask is what kind of advising is there? What kind of support was there for the students? Does the postbac program have private relationships with the medical school? We have a private relationship at the Bryn postbac program with Mount Sinai, for instance. And then what else is available to support the students while they're a postbac student? So are there workshops? Is there programming opportunities? Is there advising? Is there volunteer opportunities while they're there? And what kind of access do they have to the rest of the college? So similar for enhancement programs. So these are students who took the pre-medical courses and for whatever reason they're not competitive or they didn't get into medical school or they're not ready to apply to medical school. And again, the same issues in the enhancement programs I think are important. The last thing I think is one of the most important things is does the enhancement postbac program have any relationship with medical schools? And some students are taking enhancement programs for other reasons other than medical school. I just wanted to mention that, even though we're not going to really be focusing on that. And then the special master's program, that's harder to see because a lot of the medical schools don't advertise these special master's programs. They're for students who apply to their medical schools and they don't get into their medical schools. So Usually these special master's programs are for students who need to enhance their records. There's a loose affiliation with a medical school. They're usually sponsored or taught either at the graduate school that's attached to the medical school or at the medical school itself. There's some kind of admissions process, but sometimes it's by default, as I mentioned before, that a student applied to the medical school, didn't get in, and the medical school thought for other reasons that that student was worth asking them if they want to join this special master's program. Often there's a curricular overlap. Sometimes the student will take the first year courses for grades, and they have to perform at a certain level. And then if they do, then they're accepted to the medical school, and then they have to start all over usually and take the courses again. And then sometimes the student can stay a second year, and then that second year the student will get a graduate degree. So again, the conversation always gets tricky because there's a tremendous, nothing's easy, nothing's simple. Students don't fall into category A or category B necessarily. So, and here are just some examples. Student who took some of the courses but not all of the courses. A student who took many of these courses or most of these courses, but they took the courses a long time ago. A student who majored in a science but it didn't take some of the courses that would make them a competitive medical school applicant. And some of the students who didn't do well in some of the courses and need to take some of them but didn't complete the courses. So it's kind of all over the place. So a student sometimes doesn't know what category they fit into and where to go. So part of my role, both at a national level and just running a post-bac program, is I do a lot of counseling, advising for people who don't know where to start or where they fall, or can they be a post-bac, and what type of post-bac student can they be, and is that a good route for them? So I just want to talk to you about some general characteristics. I think no matter what kind of post-bac student or what kind of post-bac program a post-bac student is geared towards. As I mentioned before, students are older, typically. They've graduated from college, so they're usually 22 years old or older. A student who wants to go to medical school and does a post-bac program is usually extremely motivated because they're taking extra time, they're spending extra money, so obviously they really want this. They're usually willing to take on a lot of debt because, as I mentioned before, many of the post-bac programs do not have any local financial aid for the students. Although some of the enhancer programs designed for students underrepresented in medicine might have some financial aid, but that's more rare. The students are they've stopped their lives often, they just want to dive in, so they're really excited about getting as much exposure to the field as possible. In addition to taking post-bac courses, they're usually also trying to prepare for the MCAT. And then finally, the students are usually in need of a lot of advising, and they're usually a high-stress bunch because they have a lot at stake as a post-bac student. And I see some nods because I see some post-bac students who know that, or post-bac alums who know that. I wanted to let you know that there are some resources out there and some initiatives that have happened with the AAMC over the years. So I am in charge of post-bac programs on a national level for my professional organization. And about 8 to 10 years ago, the post-bac programs expanded, and there was enough of them and there was enough students looking for them that we collaborated, and the AAMC has a searchable database for post-bac programs. So I wanted to show you that there's a nice definition. They can search the type of post-bac program by state, and then all of the post-bac programs pop up with a nice definition of what type of post-bac program they are. Now, this database is as good as the post-bac programs who keep up their entry in this. So there's no monitoring. It's a self-reporting. Every year we go out to all the post-bac programs that are listed and say, time to update. And I go out on my listservs to the national listserv of undergraduate institutions, say if you just started a post-bac program and you're not in this database, it's a good idea to get into this database. The other thing I wanted to let you know about 3 years ago is the AAMC with CODA, which is the Committee on Diversity Affairs, started this Postbac Collaborative because there were enough post-bac programs at the medical school level that were geared towards students underrepresented or disadvantaged in medicine that they wanted to take a look. I'm the liaison to this group with my national organization, to take a look at post-bac programs and look at best practices and can we diversify the workforce with post-bac programs, and how do we use post-bac programs to collect data to, again, diversify the workforce. This group is struggling a little bit with its own identity in the very early stages. Much of it is because, as I said before, between affirmative action, a lot of these programs don't advertise, and they can't really say that they're there for underrepresented students. So it's hard to know who these post-bac programs are, and it's hard for them to pull together data on a national level. But I think the basic value of getting a more diverse workforce is the goal. So some of the questions and the issues that post-bac programs are struggling with, I don't know how many of you know about some of the national initiatives with the AAMC and HHMI that happened in the last 3 years to take a look at pre-medical education and is pre-medical education where it should be? And are the courses that students are coming in with the kinds of courses that medical schools want? So they've come up with a list of competencies instead of courses. I don't know how much this group knows, so I didn't throw slides in about that. But anyway, as a result, the other thing that that group came up with is they came up with a new MCAT, and the new MCAT is coming out this spring. And the new MCAT tests a few different fields other than the sciences and verbal, which is what they used to test. They're testing behavioral sciences now. They're testing statistical reasoning and quantitative analysis. And they're testing a deeper knowledge of biochemistry than ever tested before, besides the other basic concepts that they've always tested. So one of the questions that post-bac programs are asking ourselves, and these are the same questions that undergraduate institutions are asking, is what is our responsibility at the post-bac program level to teach to a standardized test, as opposed to educating students around in the sciences about what we think and what the medical schools tell us they think they need in just science competencies. So that's one of the questions we're asking and we're struggling with right now. And then the medical schools are digesting and discussing the reports that came out a few years ago, and they're deciding whether or not they're going to change their standard requirements. And I think the AAMC is hoping that medical schools sort of shy away from course requirements and instead move to more of a competency-based model where they're looking at competencies that students are bringing, not specific courses. But we're right in the middle of this conversation, so we're all waiting to see what medical schools come up with so that we can base our educational principles and courses based on that. But it's all a work in progress right now. And then the other question is, pre-medical and post-bac education isn't the only thing and hardly is the focus of what the undergraduate science programs are about. So we're all struggling with how much influence do we even have at our own colleges to even have a dialogue with the science departments about science education. I feel very lucky because at Bryn Mawr, the Postbac program is an integral part of the campus, and we started the dialogue as soon as the AAMC was starting the dialogue. So I think we've done some innovative things, but I don't know, I think that's a harder conversation to have at a lot of other institutions. And then just some general areas that post-bac programs across the country are working on right now, again, as a result of all this, is the content of each course and how it's going to meld with the course changes and the MCAT changes going forward. For instance, and I gave the most important example, is that biochemistry is a competency that's going to be very important. So do we all have to offer a biochemistry standalone course, or in the biology and the chemistry sequence, can we put enough biochemistry course content in that the students will get what they need in biochemistry before they come to medical school without adding a standalone course in biochemistry. The other thing is we're all struggling with the timeline. For instance, my post-bac program is 1 year. So students come in the summer, they take general chemistry. During the academic year, they take biology, they take organic chemistry, and they take physics. And then the following summer, they take whatever other courses they might need, and then they're done. But if medical schools are going to add more courses or students need more competencies than they already have, do we need to expand our model of education in post-bac programs to allow for flexibility? Or how do we tell prospective post-bac students what the competencies are, and they can sort of wait and do the sciences in these post-bac programs or enhance their sciences, but while they're waiting, they can take some behavioral sciences course. They can do statistics. They can make sure that they've met the English requirement. Those are just some samples, some examples. Yeah?
Keep talking about we. How many post-bac programs are there in the United States, and what's the total enrollment?
Well, so that's a really interesting question too, because a lot of colleges and universities have what they call a post-bac program. On the AAMC database, there's over 200 right now. But anybody can say that they're a post-bac program, and I'm going to raise that a little later also. And there's the schools that don't do admissions, they let anybody call themselves a post-bac student. So the total enrollment is a hard one. Then the AAMC defines a post-bac student as any student who took any course after they've graduated. So there's one line on the application that they can put any of the work that they've done as a post-bac. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that they were in a program. So the total enrollment is definitely unknown. So here are some hopes of the post-bac programs in general. That medical schools do not wind up, as a result of all this, adding more course requirements. And this is also, goes beyond post-bac programs. This is also a hope of undergraduate institutions, especially with disadvantaged students who are struggling to meet their major requirements and take the pre-med requirements and do whatever else they need. To add more courses for these students, I think, is going to maybe put up some obstacles to get the types of students that we all want in medicine. For some of the new content that's being tested on the MCAT, specifically the behavioral and social sciences, we're hoping, and the AAMC is working hard at this, is that there are free resources for students, because there's no set courses that students can take to give them the background they need for these behavioral sciences. So I think the goal of medical schools in this particular areas was so that students come into medical school a little bit more aware of the behavioral determinants of health. But what they're testing right now is some concepts from intro psych and intro sociology in the first round. And for instance, when the test questions came out, I showed it to my psychologist and my sociologist at Bryn, Mawr, and they said that the intro courses do not cover at all what's on here. So it's a work in progress. So we're hoping that the AAMC just puts together free resources so that students can, anytime during their educational experience, learn whatever the AAMC's goals are behind that section and be able to do that. And then this gets back to your point, which is the AAMC has been talking with us over the years about whose role is it to try to figure out, is a post-bac program a legitimate post-bac program? Because it's also a nice way for an undergraduate institution or any institution to make money if they have room in the courses, because students, there's no college-based aid. So there are a lot of places that call themselves post-bac programs out there. That's why I kind of went over some criteria that we're trying to help post-bac programs understand. I just have a couple slides as I close in my formal remarks because I really want to get into a two-way conversation about the Bryn Mawr Postbac program, just so that you know the context of where I'm coming from. So I run a postbac program, and I see a lot of Bryn Mawr Postbac alums in the room. So at the end, I'm going to ask you if you want to comment just about postbac programs in general. We were the first in the country. We started in 1972, pre-me. I got there in 1993. We started for the tri-college community, which was Bryn Mawr, Swarthmore, and Haverford, because the mission of the tri-college community was lifelong education, and that students didn't have to make any decisions about what they wanted to do with their lives when they were 18, 19, 20. Yet in the medical education world, they did. So students, at the end of their undergraduate experience, a lot of them would say, it's too late. Now I realize I want to be a doctor, but it's too late. So Bryn Mawr said to the tri-college community, why does it have to be too late? Why don't we run a small program for students in the tri-college community to still be able to realize their goals? And then in 1972, there was no internet, but it quickly became a national program. And we have 75 students a year, I think similar to a first-year medical school class size. Average age for us is 22 to 35. We do a very selective admissions process, so we feel like I feel an obligation to only accept students who I think have what medical schools are going to be interested in. They just need to take the courses, and they have every indication that they're going to do really well in the courses. We do it in 1 year, as I mentioned. Almost everybody gets in. That's, again, I feel a moral obligation to charge the prices that we charge, to make sure that students, again, before they even start our postbac program, can get into medical school. We have 19 medical schools that we have this private linkage relationship with. So students halfway through the program, they can apply to one of the 19 medical schools if they want to, and then they just have to meet the criteria of the medical school, and they can go right to medical school when they finish the postbac program, instead of applying after they finish a postbac program and then have 1 year of a medical application process. So about half our class links and half our class goes into the general application process. We help students get volunteer experiences, and we do a lot of programming. And then we, just so you know, I mean, we always have Peace Corps alums in our class, Teach for America alums, and students who have done really interesting work. We always have former military in our class, so we have a really interesting class of students every year. Any other questions or thoughts? Well, thank you.